Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome, and I'm enthusiastic about our presentation today and our discussion about a issue of critical importance, very timely now as we are facing the question of whether craft traditions can endure. It's a problem facing the world globally as valued craft traditions become under threat with increasing globalization and climate change. So today we have a panel of very important projects and people who lead those projects who have investigated these problems with innovative new approaches. And we'd like to ask this question at the beginning and then again at the end. Can craft traditions endure, and to what extent globalization and the creative economy play a role in that? So I would like to ask each of our participants here to begin by providing a brief overview of the mission statements of their initiatives and their strategic approaches. And then we will segue into more in-depth conversations and also look at some images about each of the initiatives. So may I please start with you, Reem, please, if you would kindly tell us about your initiatives that you lead.
Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor being here today, sharing the panel with amazing people who are doing amazing job in all the work and preserving culture and traditions. Well, inspired by Her Highness's vision, Sheikha Jawahar bint Muhammad Al-Qasimi, the wife of the ruler of Sharjah and chairperson of Nama Women Advancement Establishment and patron of Irthi Contemporary Craft Council. Our mission is to basically create a holistic approach to women artisans and enable them to reach their fullest potential. And Irthi Contemporary Craft Council has managed to do that by uplifting and upskilling the local artisans within the region. And so we aim to create a more creative industry and also spread the awareness of our heritage and our traditions and the crafts worldwide.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to hear more about this in detail.
Thank you.
And Salama, would you kindly tell us also about the amazing work you're doing with the House of Artisans and Qasr al-Hosn Fort?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with all of you here and in such an important platform and supporting of the culture and creative economy. To begin with, the scope of what I do personally in the Department of Culture and Tourism Abu Dhabi is look after historic sites in both Abu Dhabi and Al Ain, and as well as the House of Artisans, which was an addition to the portfolio and the agenda of the Department of Culture and Tourism in terms of preserving culture and heritage. So in particular, House of Artisans, and what we're highlighting today is a platform for creatives, designers, artisans, artists, architects, creative thinkers to come together and really reflect their passion of culture and heritage in terms of preserving the intangible cultural heritage in so many different creative ways. Of course, the root for that is being the authentic traditions and processes of creating traditional crafts, but how can we translate it in today's needs and today's markets, and most particular in the younger generations?
Thank you. I'm excited to also hear you tell the audience more about that ambitious project and ways in which it's unfolding. So let's now turn to Barcelona and to Caroline, if you would please join us and tell us about what you're undertaking.
Of course. Well, thank you very much. It's my honor to be part of this event. So thank you to the organization. Actually, our organization, it's a non-profit organization, the Creative Tourism Network, based in Barcelona, but that gathers destinations of all kind around the world. When I say all kind, it can be villages of 2,000 inhabitants to megalopolis like Medellin, or islands or rural areas. And our aim is to help the local governments in order to enhance the potential of the crafts and the creative industry to reach the market, the increasing market of creative tourism. which means that we help the local stakeholders, the local communities, to convert their artistic skills into creative tourism experiences that really fit with this new generation of travelers who look for new purpose, like learning how to weave, learning how to create, learning how to knit, for instance. So that would be like an introduction, and of course, I'm going to be pleased to have a more deep conversation with all my panelists from May.
Thank you for that overview, Caroline. And we will be delving into the creative ways in which you've transformed the tourism industry and supported crafts and artisans along the way. So let us now turn, please, to Rashid, if you would kindly tell us about your work with BMI.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to have us involved in this beautiful talk and conference. FBMI basically, stands for Fatima bint Mohammed bin Zayed Initiative. We were established in 2010 with the basic aim of being the UAE's sort of diplomacy project abroad. And our main mission is to empower people, empower women, and improve lives and develop underprivileged societies and communities. We do this through our unique approach of providing employment opportunities. So we employ a majority of women and empower communities, and alongside ethical employment, we give them social services such as healthcare and education. All in all, it's a model where the products made by the women and the know-how given to them, the products are then sold through our platforms, and is, in the end, a self-sustainable business model that is sort of going on and has been going on for more than a decade now.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I would like to turn to Reem, and I would like to ask you if you would address the idea of collaborations and the new ways in which collaborations take place as a way to uphold, support, train, and further the development of handicrafts.
Definitely. I think something that I truly believe in, and something that everyone in IRSI also believes in, is collaboration is key to success, and especially in times like these. When we speak about IRSI and the collaborations that we've had, we try to basically spread our wings across the Manisa region. And so but in order to do that, we had to upscale the artisans themselves. And once we knew that we were ready, and we wanted to basically enhance their capabilities as well, we started collaborating with different artisans. We started creating these programs, which were cross-cultural programs, where we had, for instance, collaborations with artisans from Pakistan, teaching our artisans on how to do certain embroideries. We also did the same thing with the weavers and spinners in Nanuki in Kenya. The same thing we did with also the Afghan refugees in Pakistan with the UNHCR. So many of these collaborations meant a lot because the artisans themselves started gaining a lot of knowledge when it came to the different types of weaves and threads and material being used. These women or let's say these artisans have never left their countries prior. Once we started opening up our programs, we started getting them, even flying them to the UAE sometimes, in order to advance them and in order to create a more sustainable lifestyle, not only for these artisans, but also for their families. And then on another level, we started also partnering and collaborating with international brands, and these were basically trying to uplift and upskill our artisans in IRSI Contemporary Craft Council in order to have them on a par with the rest of the world in terms of skills. And also, I think that added a lot of confidence to, pardon me, it added a lot of confidence to our artisans, where previously they were only working or creating these crafts as a hobby. but today it's actually helping their livelihoods and the livelihoods of their families, and so they're very proud today of the products that they're producing. So we're very thankful for all the collaborations that we've had both regionally and internationally and locally, and also the collaborations we've had with the different artisans and artists, young or old.
Thank you very much. And the images that you've shared are fascinating. The level of creativity is extraordinarily high, and we see the essence of traditions that underlie a very innovative approach to design. And I'm wondering if you might talk to us a little bit about the ideas of sustainable design and the way in which you encourage that and how you see the value of that in the cultures that collaborate.
It's very important for us to look at design as, or culture, as something that needs to be renewed every decade or every other day. To us in Irthi Contemporary Craft Council, we try to elevate designs and by preserving the heritage, learning from the past, but then again, taking it in a new context and presenting it to the younger audience. And I think that is what keeps us relevant. And it's key to be relevant today in today's dialogues and conversations. It's great to have the dialogue, it's great to have our heritage, but if we're not learning from this heritage and modernizing it with the use of technology, I think our heritage will go to waste. And so I'm sure that everyone here in the room believes that, yes, we do respect and appreciate our culture and heritage, but if we don't do anything with it, it's going to wither and be pushed away. It's the younger designers today that we are collaborating with and are bringing our heritage and crafts and presenting them, playing with the craft and representing it and repackaging it to the entire world. I think that is key, and I think we owe it a lot to the young designers that we've collaborated with in Irthi, and whether they're in-house or whether they're from the region. But having that shift and starting up that conversation and believing in the younger designers and educating them about the past is key. And in order to move forward, we need to make sure that we are creating a sustainable market for the younger designers to preserve our heritage.
Thank you very much. The way in which you've underscored the idea of renewal as a fundamental aspect of creativity, both in the past and continuing on today, is highly important, and I hope that we can delve further into that with some of our other discussions. I'd like to turn now to Salama, and it's hard to know where to start with all of the incredibly innovative work that you've been doing with the renewal of House of Artisans and the new initiatives that I'll ask you about shortly. But I'd like to start with this concept that you have of giving back to the nation and how that infuses this idea of creative economy.
Correct. So basically the House of Artisans is one project of many other initiatives that are under the Department of Culture and Tourism to preserve the cultural heritage. Other projects also are very much digitized projects, digital projects that will be very soon launched. For example, we have the Abu Dhabi Register for Artisans, which is a digital platform for every artisan to register and to be trained and to get certified. And then they will get the privilege to be part of another platform, which is called Abu Dhabi Crafts. So Abu Dhabi Crafts platform is an e-commerce platform that allows the beautiful products from artisans to be sold locally online, but also internationally. By doing that, we are supporting the artisans, we are supporting designers and artists, we are supporting SMEs and freelancers Part of the people who designed the website, for example, are local designers, whether Emirati or non-Emirati. The people who help us to develop the web pages, for example, but also collaborations between artisans and designers and artists who their products will be sold. So all of those are supporting the bigger portfolio of handicrafts and cultural heritage. And one very important thing is how are we supporting the artisans to sustain their crafts? We are doing that by training them. We do have, until today, more than 200 artisans trained, and some of them are very much specialized to take them into the e-commerce world, to take them into business development. So those particular artisans are being trained by Google. And there are other artisans who will actually be able to put their products in Amazon as well, which will be launched very soon too. So this is how we are reaching out to a wider audience. This is how we are disseminating our cultural heritage. And this is how we are also showing the world our cultural identity, which is a mix of many different intercultural aspects, as Reem mentioned as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you mentioned the idea of audience. So the new audiences for the crafts is a very important element of innovation. And in terms of the way in which you reach these new audiences, it occurs to me that digitization is one of your key components and strategies. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit about the use of digitization?
Sure. One very simple example is in the permanent exhibition. Maybe you saw part of it in the slides, but in the permanent exhibition of House of Artisans, we do have digital interactives and on screens for younger audiences and younger visitors to be able to learn the authentic way of creating a certain craft, like Sedu, for example, which is known in the Bedouin region and more in the desert region, and Khous and Telli, the basic three crafts. So they are digitized on screens, and you'll be able to create your own pattern or your own symbol, and you can actually share it with a friend or send it to your email, for example. This is a very simple thing, but other bigger initiatives in terms of digitization, we already managed to digitize more than 150 elements of social practices and intangible cultural heritage. Part of it is handicrafts, whether it was marine or marine crafts, or again, Sedu, Khous, Telli, perfume making, culinary as well. So all of these are also part of the bigger portfolio of crafts. And the other thing is also digitization of the portfolio and the list of artisans. We have done a mapping of the artisans in Abu Dhabi Emirate, which are around 1,000 artisans. And all of those artisans are also part of ADRA, which is Abu Dhabi Registration of Artisans, and these are all digitized as well lists, so people will be able to access those digitized platforms and will be able to collaborate and work with them and make use of, even students can actually do research and documentation with all of those initiatives that we're doing.
Thank you. So the dissemination of cultural knowledge through technology is a robust program that you've been spearheading.
Correct.
And as we think about that, let's turn to Caroline, who also has a highly innovative approach to cultural knowledge through tourism. If you would please share with us some of your ideas and maybe even backstep into how you came upon this in the first place as an innovative founder of your the initiatives that you run worldwide.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm completely fascinated by the projects of my colleagues. I was looking for. So regarding creative tourism, actually, my background is from cultural sector, and I would not imagine when I started that tourism could go so deeper into the local cultures. So when I discovered this, and especially the creative tourism concept theorized by the professors Greg Richards and Crispin Raymond in the 2000s, we realized that there was really a real market for new travelers willing to cross the planet in order to learn precisely about how to knead, about how to weave, and all these very specific techniques. We are really talking about kilometer zero culture, no longer the national tourism promotion. We are really talking about a specific culture of people in each area. And we realized that there was a gap between all this potential from the crafts sector and the creative industries and the tourism industry, because there were two completely different models. We had been working during decades with the tourism industry that was managed by a top-down model, in which the tourism industry imposed a standard offer for the mass tourism. And we were now, and especially due to the new technology that empowered the travelers, that empowered the individual and the society, in front of a bottom-up model in which the traveler imposed his demands to the tourism industry. But precisely, the travel agency, the tourism industry were not able to provide them with the specific demand, because what they wanted was to learn how to dance tango in Argentina, or how to play the tabla in India, or how to make basketry in the south of Portugal. So it was really like a paradigm shift in which the tourism industry had to co-create, and that's the key word, I think, for all of us, co-create with all these local communities, be they, well, I named them the dream makers, because at the end, they are the one who will make the experience unforgettable for the travelers. All these people who are not from the tourism industry, who have never worked within the sector, but they are craftsmen, they are artists, they are fishermen, they are housewives, and they own very specific skills that they have to share with the travelers. So, of course, there is a gap in this cloud, we could say, because we had, from the one hand, all these dream makers, and then the tourism industry. And that's why we created the Creative Tourism Network, in order to, as Rim just said, make them aware of the potential they have, make them self-confident, that they really had a potential that could be a purpose for travelers to cross the planet. And of course, to train them, as Salamat said as well, because it is not the same to create in a workshop than converting themselves in, be they small entrepreneur, because we have to design experiences that really fit with the travel agency. And of course, the third step is to create linkage, because we don't expect the artisan or the craftsman to convert himself into a travel agent. That doesn't make sense. He has to be really focused on his skills, on the fact it can convert it into an experience for the tourist. But then we have also to make some bridge with the travel agency, with the tour operators, who have to open the mind, who have to reinvent themselves in order to no longer sell the same excursions to mainstream people, but they have to co-create themselves with the local handicrafts and the local creative industry in order to propose new circuits, because there are more and more this kind of thematic travel agencies that propose stays for precisely niches, as I said, who want to go to New Zealand in order to learn a specific technique of weaving, or to go to Ecuador. And they are really disposed to pay something like $2,000 or $3,000 a week without the transport, just to learn from this technique. So that's not only a niche, that's really something that is enhancing and increasing like new market. And that's a little bit the reason why of our network, to help the destination to create these segments. Of course, not to make like just a catalog of the experiences, but also to use all these experiences to co-create and to recreate the DNAs of the destination, because each destination has its specificity. So they have really to differentiate themselves with their local culture, with their DNA, with their lifestyle. So we also help them on this way, because we work with the local communities to recreate their narrative, their own story, their own storytelling. And then, of course, we promote the destination through the network and within this new market that is very rich, because under the umbrella of creative tourism, we can find every day lots of new hobby travelers. So that would be a little bit our role in this different sectors.
Thank you. So you've identified a shift in interest of the tourist from visiting monuments, landmarks, objects, to a fascination and desire to connect with others through learning about skills, in fact, engaging in those skills in a participatory manner. That makes me think about where we are now with COVID, and how does your strategy work with COVID? How have you learned from this moment? Does it present an opportunity?
Well, precisely. As working with creativity, we always try to convert negative externality into opportunities. And in COVID, we have to say that precisely what was considered as a negative point of creative tourism, that was considered as a niche tourism for small groups, converted into an asset, because precisely tourism at that moment was only could focus on a reduced group that could guarantee the protocol of COVID in all the places. And even in the worst time of the pandemic and of the lockdown, creative tourism really developed, and even with new destinations, because they didn't have any other option to offer. They couldn't, of course, welcome cruisers. They couldn't, of course, welcome international travelers. So they had to develop staycation, but of course to seduce the inhabitants, to seduce the residents with different things. They couldn't just propose them to revisit the same museum they had visited so many times in the scholarship. So they really had to create and design new experiences from intangible heritage. And that was really an opportunity for the locals to rediscover their own culture with very different narrative. And this is where creativity is introduced, because you can organize a story completely different for a family or for a group of friends or so on. So that was very important at this moment. And also because there was a need for the people maybe to keep safety and to use hands, and to really save this moment to work on do-it-yourself and refine themselves. So actually COVID has been for us a moment in which we found an opportunity to reinvent as well tourism in this way.
So you've helped elevate the value of local, and in this time, that's commendable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'd like to turn to you, Farshid, please. And I would like to ask you about the work that you do with FBMI, and especially I'm interested in the role of cultural diplomacy and soft power.
Interesting that you ask about cultural diplomacy and soft power. I mean, we had a conversation about it. I'm just trying to share an image. So FBMI, what we've done over the years, in addition to preserving crafts and empowering lives, connecting the bridge, building the bridge between UAE artisans. I mean, recently we had a collaboration with House of Artisans in Khasr al-Husn, which was a really good sort of an example of cultural diplomacy at its finest. So what the UAE is doing is empowering lives in Afghanistan, for example, and bridging that and bringing together these resources. FBMI has turned out to be the UAE's project in cultural diplomacy, meaning that the project is announced at the United Nations. The carpets gifted, I would show you, for example, you know, the UAE proudly could go on visits, and as we can see in the picture here, the carpet gifted to the Pope by His Highness was done by FBMI. And that's what we are trying to play a role. And as of now, the latest sort of plans of FBMI is to open a diplomacy lab in Emirates Towers, Dubai, for example, to sort of tell this story. and to work on a book with the Golden Jubilee of the UAE, so 50 years of UAE diplomacy, 50 milestones, and how FPMI has been plotted into that. So, for example, in promoting UAE's strong values such as tolerance, coexistence, and how projects like FPMI, projects like the UAE initiatives could play a role in this, could actually, although it could be in terms of a gift, in terms of collaborations, in terms of good work, or whatever it may be, it's just an example of how we have played a role, how initiatives like these could actually play a role in promoting the UAE's values, like I mentioned, tolerance, coexistence. For example, the recent Abraham Accords, which were signed, the carpet of exchange, the gift was given as an FPMI carpet. Additionally, not just, carpets we mentioned, we have the other enterprises which work on food and agriculture, farming, with a good cause, but at the end with a story, and how we try to, how I believe myself and how we believe that initiatives like these, in addition to improving lives, in addition to, it could actually be used as a tool of cultural diplomacy for any nation. I mean, the model, once we've seen a success of a model like FPMI over the past 10 years, for example, it could be implemented in different nations, it could be implemented in different sectors, it could be worked with different sort of industries as well. And that's why we wanted to sort of talk about cultural diplomacy and soft power, how it could be interlinked with these kind of initiatives.
Thank you. So you speak of the humanitarian aspects of the work of FBMI and this hand-to-hand relationship between the makers and the people who receive these objects. It's very important, and the complexities of ethical employment is also something that you delve into and are challenged in your work, and maybe it's an opportunity for you to let us know about that, especially in the light of recent events in Afghanistan.
Exactly, yes. I mean, as you know, FPMI is sort of working, our first pilot project was in Afghanistan, and the recent sort of events have definitely made it challenging, but it's also proven how initiatives like these do go on. I mean, it's a culturally acceptable, community-based concept where people could work from homes. There's no woman, for example, from the thousands of women we've employed, no one's been forced to go to a workplace, no one's been forced to go against their culture. Unfortunately, in a conservative society like Afghanistan, where women aren't allowed to leave the homes, it is projects like these that could actually give them an opportunity, give them some hope towards empowerment, and that's what we try to work on. The events have definitely been challenging, and we sort of stayed determined. We work on many different sectors, such as employing the women and also healthcare benefits for them, education, basic social services, and I believe that is the way forward. And the UAE has shown on a global scale, like I mentioned, mentioning these projects or gifting these carpets to world dignitaries, it shows that the UAE has succeeded in showing an example of how foreign aid, or how initiatives like these on a scale of, as you may be aware, 40 years of continuous war, 20 years of sort of the recent foreign involvement in Afghanistan. But unfortunately today, a lot of NGOs and people don't have someone to look to. A lot of the embassies are not there anymore. A lot of NGOs have had to leave, and that is understandable. But it is projects like these that don't need that sort of helping hand. We haven't looked at charity. We haven't given a handout to these women. We've teach them the skills, capacity building. We've helped them learn new crafts. Work with, for example, Emirati artisans. They came here and they had a chance of exchanging these values and skills with each other. So it's stuff like this where they could continue, and what we just do is ensure there's a platform where they can sell their products. And as Her Excellency rightly mentioned, it's developing a product which would have a demand for in an international market, something. And like we see with our we have our retail enterprises, and our model has been that the initiative empowers women, we give them work to do, we give them products to make, but ultimately it's the retail brands that we have, Zulia, for example, and Mira, that does the food, that has to ensure and operate as a business to ensure there's a market for those products, ensure it's branded, marketed. It is a product that anyone here in the audience, for example, would want to buy. We understand it has a story to it, but it is also important that it's something that that appeals to a normal normal customer. And that's where I definitely agree with Her Excellency and what Salama said, that with these crafts, yes, we have to preserve the crafts. We have to look at how we could give back to society, but it's also got to work in a way, a model where we've got to keep in a world of, at a time of globalization and where the automation, and unfortunately automation of such crafts, and these crafts are diminishing at a rapid speed. So it's stuff like these, and we have to consciously sort of work closely with each other, and I'm sure we all have similar mindsets to at the same time of preserving crafts, teach them new crafts, teach them new skills to keep up with today's demand, today's trends, and today's, what shifts today's, and the shifts that we see today. So I think that's definitely something. We go back to the economic sort of factors involved, and it touches a bit on diplomacy and what we do, and the UAE has sort of proven that by a project like FBMI, how it is successful and able to cope even in today's situation in Afghanistan.
Thank you very much. So let's think about what we've listened to now and turn to the sustainability of crafts through economic strategies. And in each case, innovation occurs through the creative economy. I'd like to ask each of you if you could give some concrete evidence of ways in which those economic factors have been leading to the success of the continuation of the crafts and to innovative new designs.
Well, in terms of Earthy Contemporary Craft Council and the artisans, we started off with one artisan. Today we have 500 artisans that are registered in Earthy Contemporary Craft Council. We have 250 home-based artisans. We have a whole kind of family that are all over the world, in different patches of the world, in different countries. But I think the baseline that keeps us all connected is the creation of a sustainable economy for all of these women. And I think the only thing that would keep the conversation going is by, as my colleagues mentioned, is by keeping the designs relevant, by reaching out and collaborating with the designers, by creating new markets for these women artisans to be able to showcase and display our crafts, our heritage, upscaling them continuously. Research and development is key. And I think when we have three different entities talking about the same mission, I think there is hope. And each one of these entities are working within their own strategies and looking to fulfill their missions by creating an inclusive environment for these artisans, and by default it will be a sustainable economic, would have a sustainable economic impact not only on the artisans' livelihoods and their families, but also on the reviving of heritage, the constant conversation of heritage, the creating a new narrative even in a few years. And if we look into borrowing from the past, we do borrow from the past, but whatever we borrow from the past we are using today, and we will keep using even in the future. So I think keeping the conversation happening and alive, and as well as fully investing in these female artisans is key to have a sustainable economic impact definitely in the future.
And thank you very much. And it's impressive. And further to that, Salama, perhaps you would show us some of the measures in terms of economic strategies that have brought success to your projects.
Sure. So in our case, there are, and I personally believe that there are three major elements that you need to keep in mind while you're preserving cultural heritage, and while you're also going back to the first question, how are we giving back to a nation's economy with handicrafts? So the first thing is intensifies different the projects and elements and initiatives for artisans, such as trainings, for example. Another thing, creating physical spaces for artisans and artists to work together and to collaborate. And the third thing I think, which is also very important, is to create retail spaces as well. So creative spaces, but also retail resources, could be physical, could be digital, for them to showcase their products and sell. The other point I wanted to mention is policy making. This is super important. There are some other sessions that talk about IP rights and trade and all of that, trademarks. So in terms of handicrafts, how are we protecting the artisans and how are we protecting their products? And by creating those policies, for example, regulation and of the authenticity of crafts, let's say. Because we see today lots of crafts that are unfortunately being brought and I don't know, made in such and such country, and then they put on them made in Abu Dhabi or made in Dubai or made in UAE. So this also kind of challenges the authenticity and the craft making and the economy of handicrafts. The last thing that I wanted to mention is, and some of you also mentioned this, capacity building for artisans, but also collaboration between different entities, governmental entities, private sector, educational, for example, educational institutions as well. So, for example, the three of us here have collaborated, which is amazing. We do have beautiful products from Earthy exhibited at House of Artisans. We recently just closed up Al Hassan Festival with a beautiful initiative by FBMI at Al Hassan Festival. But those collaborations are, I think, essential for the handicrafts and essential for a sustainable portfolio of handicrafts.
Thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive answer and analysis. And perhaps, Farshid, you have something to add to that from your perspective.
Definitely, I agree with both points. It's very important to have products which appeal and are keeping up with trends, in addition to successful collaborations and pooling our resources. Something else I'd like to add is the economic model of our structures of our projects and our initiatives. I'll give you a small example from Afghanistan, for example, where there have been other NGOs and projects, investments where women have been given products to make, but it's had a lifespan. Unfortunately, they haven't kept up, and after 2 years or 5 years, they continue making products, but there's nowhere to sell it to, or it stops, or the access to the market suddenly, in international markets, as we understand, changes. So it's really important to have that economic model and have that sort of component, like we have, for example, the initiative, and then we have the enterprises, social enterprises, which operate as a business, which keep up with demand, which ensure there's a market in the long run, which all in all is a 360 model. So what's made is, in the end, sold for profit. Profits are made in the end. It's a business, but it's reinvested back into the initiative, which means more employment, more products are made. You're keeping up with new collaborations, and so on. And even with after our success or our pilot project in Afghanistan, we are looking now to expand to implement the same model in other countries, and also looking at the UAE, for example. So women on social security, we would look at. We are looking soon to hopefully provide an alternative, or develop their skills and serve as a trainer for the women on social security, to hopefully ensure they can one day earn to convert that into an income for them, and at the same time develop their skills, and most importantly have the platform, provide the platform where there is a business. One day they could either start their own businesses because of the skills, or they have access to the market. And how else, an international market, or with designer collaborations, where we've seen, for example, with Afghanistan, a carpet woven in a village or by an underprivileged woman who can't leave her home, but gets the recognition that's gifted to a world leader, or is in a UAE embassy or a project, or is talked about here today in this conference. So it's that sort of recognition and the commercial viability, longevity of the project, which I think is really important, the economic model itself.
Thank you, each of you, for sharing your insights and deep knowledge about the very complex but urgent issue, which is the survival, the enduring aspects of creative work, of the craft specifically. And what we've gleaned from all of this is that it is indeed possible through innovation, through the creative economy, through strategic thinking, through collaboration, through broad and deep partnerships. And it's a call for authenticity, for agency of those involved, and also for adaptability in these times. So we have a bright prospect, and thank you very much, all of you, for participating and for your interest and involvement.
Thank you very
so much.
Thank you.